Hello, dear viewers, this is the Moto channel with you. Tell me, how many motorcycles with more than 4 cylinders in the engine have you seen in your life on the road or at a viewing spot? Not that many, right? And the most common among them was the 6-cylinder Goldwing or the BMW GTL 1600. However, history knows quite a few cases of motorcycles being built with more than 6 cylinders in the engine. In this segment, I invite you to talk a bit about motorcycles with V8 engines. It may seem that this is a rather small topic, since this type of machine is very rare, but believe me, the topic is by no means small and is quite fascinating. Make yourself comfortable, let's get started. Dynamic. I'm sure that the vast majority of you, even if woken up at 3 a.m., could define a V8 engine. But for the record, I'll read out one paragraph from Wikipedia. A V8 is an 8-cylinder piston engine in which 2 banks of 4 cylinders share a common crankshaft and are arranged in such a way that they resemble the letter V. That's enough terminology. We're more interested in when such an engine was first built and where it was used. Dynamic music, dynamic. V8 means the United States of America, at least this engine, is firmly associated with American muscle cars. The man who patented and came up with the idea to arrange 8 cylinders in a V shape was a Frenchman named Léon Levavasseur. Yes, the V8 was born in France. Dynamic music. Léon Levavasseur was a talented engine builder of his time. Back in the summer of 1902, in a conversation with the industrialist Jules Gastambide, he suggested that powered flight would require powerful and lightweight multi-cylinder engines. Levavasseur was not talking to Gastambide for no reason. Léon didn't have the money to set up production, so he needed to convince a sponsor, and Léon kept saying, dynamic. If we jump in on time, we'll be raking in money, and we'll name the company in honor of your daughter. That last point became a strong argument, and that's how the company Antoinette was born. In that same year, 1902, Léon patented his V8 design. By 1904, Antoinette's V8 engines were already being installed in racing cars and boats, and many of these machines took prize-winning places, clearly demonstrating the advantages of this engine. Dynamic indeed. Experiments were conducted with installing a V8 engine in a glider. In 1906, the Antoinette Company received a contract to build an airplane for Captain Ferdinand Ferber. The history of the V8 engine began, and I'm sure you'll be surprised to learn how quickly this engine appeared in the frame of the dynamic Naya motorcycle. Have you heard of the aviation pioneer Glenn Hammond Curtis? He assembled his V8 in 1906 with the intention of installing it on a glider. But before Glenn took to the air, in 1907, he became the fastest man on the planet with the help of the world's first V8 motorcycle. A bit of historical background. During the first decade of the 20th century, absolute speed records did not belong to cars or aviation. They belonged to trains. In 1903, 2 records for rail transport were set just 5 days apart. On October 23, an experimental car from Siemens and Halske, powered by electricity, reached a speed of 206.7 km/h, and on October 28, a similar car from Allgemeine Elektrizitätsgesellschaft set a record of 210.2 km/h. Just so you understand, at that time, this was the fastest thing capable of carrying a person. And so, Curtis set out to break this record, and for that, the Curtis Vivre 8 motorcycle was specially built. A 4.4-liter engine, which produced about 40 horsepower, was installed in a modified motorcycle frame. The power from the monstrous engine was transmitted directly from the crankshaft to the rear wheel via a drive shaft. The motorcycle weighed 127 kg, of which 68 kg was the weight of the engine of this marvel of technology. In 1907, Glenn took the Florida Speed Carnival to Ormond Beach, and in the race he set a speed record of 219.45 tachometer H, earning the title of the fastest man on Earth. It was only 11 years later that the Blitz-Benz car was able to reach a speed of 226.9 km/h. The Curtis motorcycle became the first two-wheeled machine with a V8 engine. Nowadays, history knows quite a few motorcycles with such an engine. However, the vast majority of them are either custom bikes or special racing motorcycles built as one-offs, or prototypes that were planned for mass production, but for various reasons, never made it. And only a very small number of such machines can boast even a limited production run. After Glenn Curtis's record, the idea of putting a V8 into a motorcycle frame was forgotten for a long time. After all, for two-wheeled vehicles, it's always been a rather exotic engine. In the 1930s, Plinio Galbucero founded a motorcycle company in Italy, which oddly enough was called Galbucero. He originally built motorcycles with engines ranging from 175 to 500 cc from Sturmey Archer and Rudge Python, as well as gearboxes from Berman or Sturmey Archer. However, towards the end of the 1930s, one acquaintance would lead to the creation of two unique motorcycles. Plinio meets a talented racer, an experienced mechanic named Toyo Adolfo Marama from Trieste Marama. Although he didn't have an engineering degree, he was gifted with talent. He developed two interesting engines for Galbucero motorcycles. The first was a 250cc two-stroke V4, and the second was a 500cc V8, which was essentially two V4s joined together. This engine was paired with a 4-speed gearbox, and a supercharger was used to increase its power. This engine produced about 28 horsepower, which allowed the motorcycle to reach speeds of up to 150 km/h. An amazing machine, V8 two-stroke supercharger, and this was in the late 1930s. Two motorcycles, the V4 and the V8, were created as single prototypes and presented at the Milan International Motor Show in 1938. The engineers' plans were disrupted by the war, the factory was partially destroyed, and the motorcycle engines were lost. After the war, Galbucero continued production. These were light and inexpensive motorcycles and tricycles that post-war Italy needed. In 1955, production shut down due to financial problems. A replica of the Galbucero Find 8 motorcycle was created in 2008. The next story with the V8 and the motorcycle takes place in Italy again. Yes, it must be admitted, the passionate Italian character has given the world more than one beautiful motorcycle, and Lamera.
He can't get things in order. He can't get things in order. He can get things in order. He has to go to the district with aviation. To be continued.
This machine was created as the ultimate weapon in road racing. Please welcome the Moto Guzzi V8, although this motorcycle only had 2 full racing seasons and didn't win a single Grand Prix. It is surrounded by such a powerful aura of exclusivity that it has become a true legend. But let's take it step by step. In the early 1950s, Giulio Cesare Carcana, working at Moto Guzzi, created excellent ultralight single-cylinder racing machines with 250 and 350 engines, cubic centimeters, which in 9 years won 8 world championship titles. However, in the 500cc class, Moto Guzzi could not compete with the inline fours of other companies. In 1953, Carcana created his own racing inline four, with the engine positioned along the frame. With this, the engineer ensured good aerodynamics for the motorcycle. Yes, at that time, fairings were just starting to gain popularity. The motorcycle with the inline four was not very successful, In 2 years, it won only 2 races, and work on it was discontinued. In 1954, Giulio decided to create a new racing motorcycle, but he no longer wanted to go with inline fours. Initially, a V6 engine was considered, but to eliminate first-order vibrations in such an engine, a 120-degree cylinder angle is required, which is extremely inconvenient for layout. So, attention turned to a V8. Such an engine would be no wider than Giulio's 4-cylinder, and a 90-degree cylinder angle, which is necessary to eliminate first-order vibrations, is quite acceptable from a layout perspective. The first drawing of the engine, made by Enrico Cantoni and Umberto Tadero, is dated November 15, 1954, and by March 1955, bench tests had already begun. This engine was an extremely compact liquid-cooled unit with a dry sump lubrication system. The cylinder bore and piston stroke were 44 and 41 mm respectively, which resulted in a displacement of 500 ccc. 2 rows of cylinders arranged at a 90-degree angle were mounted on a magnesium alloy crankcase. The swing arm pivot of the rear suspension also passed through the crankcase, increasing rigidity and reducing weight. Carcana installed 8 Dell'Orto carburetors on the V8. All 8 carburetors were controlled by a system of linkage levers from a single throttle cable and were supplied by 2 remote float chambers. Although Moto Guzzi first tested a 4-valve design back in 1924, they used a 2-valve format on the V8 to avoid making an already overly complex design even more complicated. The 1955 engine produced 62 horsepower at 11,500 revolutions per minute and could easily rev up to 16,000. To feed this voracious engine, a 34-liter fuel tank was installed. Nevertheless, the dry weight of the motorcycle, equipped with a large aluminum fairing, was only 137 kg. The first test ride of the new model took place on April 14, 1955. However, the motorcycle was plagued by various breakdowns and malfunctions, while the riders suffered crashes and injuries. And despite putting up serious competition in the 1955 and 1956 seasons, they never managed to celebrate a victory. By the 1957 season, the motorcycle had been seriously improved. Each of the 8 carburetors received a tiny individual float chamber. In addition, Carcana increased the compression ratio and valve lift. The modified engine was already producing 79 horsepower at 12,000 revolutions per minute. A 350cc version of the 8-cylinder was also developed, but it was never used in races. To make sure the reliability issues were resolved, Bill Lomas put more than 1,600 kilometers on the modified machine during the off-season. At the end of February 1957, the Moto Guzzi team went out to a straight section of the Appian Way, where the V8 set several world speed records. On March 19, 1957, the 8-cylinder finally celebrated its first victory at the opening round of the Italian Championship in Syracuse. 5 weeks later, at the Capodoro race at the Imola track, Dickie Dale brought the Moto Guzzi V8 another victory. Moreover, he had a significant delay at the start and still finished first, fighting his way through the Galera and MV Augusta bikes that were leading. That was the end of the victories, and the motorcycle once again faced a series of failures and breakdowns. Despite its record speed performance, the motorcycle never achieved racing glory. The V8 engine was plagued by seizing issues, overheating, and was expensive to produce and maintain. Moreover, in the 1950s, there were no tires, suspensions, or brakes that allowed full control of a motorcycle at speeds of 300 km/h. In 1958, 3 years after production began, they stopped making the Otto Cylindri. The next V-shaped monster comes from the United States of America and was created by A.J. Potter specifically for quarter-mile drag races. Back in his school years, Potter got the idea stuck in his head that a Chevrolet engine from the end looks like a Harley engine. Being quite young, he got into motorcycles and racing, and already in 1957, AJ started building his first custom bike. The monster with a V8 in a Harley frame was ready in 1960. This motorcycle became his ticket to international fame and popularity. At first, Potter built a centrifugal clutch using parts from Harley-Davidson brakes and a sprocket from a combine that was on his father's farm. But this solution turned out to be ineffective, and he was plagued by failures in the races. As A.J. Potter once said, "One night after another can of beer, I came to the conclusion that a clutch wasn't necessary." Potter made a direct drive to the wheel on the drag strip. He would set the motorcycle on a stand at the starting line, rev the engine up to about 7,000 revolutions per minute, and then, when the green light came on, he would just push the bike off the stand and take off. Imagine how crazy you have to be to harness the power of a 500 horsepower Chevy V8 engine while basically sitting right on top of it. If you look at it from the outside, it's a widowmaker for sure. Yes, that's how the word widowmaker is translated. It's almost entirely made up of the engine. There's not even a radiator, even though the engine is liquid cooled, and that's all because it only runs for a short period during the race. In 1973, the widowmaker motorcycle was entered into the Guinness Book of Records as the fastest accelerating motorcycle in the world, covering a quarter mile in 8.68 seconds with a finish speed of 276 km/h. A lot of time has passed since then. Now, this title belongs to Eric Tibiol and his jet drag bike, but Potter's motorcycle is still a cool chapter in two-wheeled history. By the way, there's a separate couple of words about jet motorcycles. Here's a pop-up hint. And here are some shots so you can realize all of Potter's madness. He manages to cover a quarter mile in this video in 10.3 seconds, reaching a speed of 233 km/h while keeping the rear wheels spinning the whole time. By the way, Potter isn't the only one who thought of using a V8 for a drag bike. AJ is just one of the most famous daredevils. Installing a V8 in a two-wheeled chassis is a common practice in this sport, and these shots clearly confirm this continuation. And here we are, friends. We've reached the legendary Boss Hoss motorcycles, the massive production giants equipped with a production V8.
I've got a 5.7 and just one wheel that gets all the torque. Screw you, comrades, that's all.
The Boss Hoss Cycles Company was founded by Monty Warren in 1990. It all started with the idea of creating a big, powerful motorcycle in the American sense. Warren decided to equip the bike with a 5.7-liter Chevrolet engine. The first machine was assembled in a small workshop of less than 500 square meters in the city of Dyersburg, Tennessee. Monty managed to combine the traditional cruiser style with a huge engine. Despite the considerable weight in the gears, kilograms, the motorcycle handled quite well thanks to the proper weight distribution. The power was 245 horsepower, with a torque of 450 Newton meters. In order to somehow put this power to use, an 18-inch rear wheel with a 300mm wide car tire was used. Let's take a look at the evolution of these motorcycles. At first, Bosch offered their product as a kit consisting of a frame and chassis, giving the customer the opportunity to choose the engine and add any custom features. Since 1996, the company started offering complete motorcycles. This was the BHC3 ZZ4 model. The ending of the name refers to the installed power unit. So the ZZ4 engine boasts a displacement of 5.7 liters and a power output of 355 horsepower. This model existed until 2011. In 1997-1998, a small batch of Boss Hoss motorcycles with a 4-liter V6 engine from Chevrolet was produced, but this version did not gain popularity. A real Yankee needed a V8. At that time, sales were about 300 units per year. Until 1999, the motorcycles were equipped with a single-speed gearbox plus a reverse gear. After that, the transmission became 2-speed. In 2000, the leaders of Bosco Cycles went wild on Colombian Coke and presented to the public the Boscos BHC, 3502 with a big block in the frame. It was a machine with an 8.2-liter 500 horsepower engine. The model was produced until 2008, and in the same year it was replaced by the BHC 3LS2 model, which received a 6-liter engine. In January 2006, Bosch motorcycles and production facilities received full vehicle type approval from the European Commission, which effectively made Bosch Cycles the only globally recognized manufacturer of motorcycles with a V8 engine. By that time, about 4,000 motorcycles had rolled off the assembly line, and in 2009, Bosch was equipped with the LS3 engine. The model with the LS3 engine boasts 445 horsepower and 603 Newton meters of torque. In 2012, a new generation of motorcycles appeared. The focus was on modern engines, aluminum cylinders, 32 valves, 2 overhead camshafts, and so on. In addition to two-wheeled vehicles, Bosch has been producing a line of trikes for several years now. There is also a limited edition with a 496 engine which has a displacement of 8.1 liters, just 100 cc short of the big block from the year 2000. The American company still produces a range of motorcycles with large V8 engines. To be fair, Bosch makes the most common V8 motorcycles in the world. No other company or firm has surpassed or even come close, either in the number of units produced or in the number of models. So that's definitely a success. Now let's move to Europe. In the late 80s and early 90s, have you heard of the Italian company called Morbidelli? Since the early 70s, this company, in addition to woodworking machines, started making racing motorcycles. Until 1976, the motorcycles were made exclusively for factory racers, but after that, they became available to other racers and teams as well. Morbidelli motorcycles became famous for winning the Grand Prix 4 times. However, in this material, we are interested in one prototype from this company. Back in the late 80s, Giancarlo Morbidelli gathered the best engineers and designers in Italy to create a sport tourer with a V8 engine in the frame. Unlike many motorcycles with such an engine, the Morbidelli prototype was a very neat road motorcycle. The first prototype was presented in 1992. Its engine was a 4-stroke, liquid-cooled V8 with a displacement of 850 cc, featuring a dual overhead camshaft system and 4 valves per cylinder. This power unit produced 120 horsepower and allowed the 200-kilogram motorcycle to reach a speed of 230-240 km/h. Excellent performance for a sport touring motorcycle. By 1992, the company decided that Pininfarino's design was too extravagant. In 1994, a revised prototype was introduced, and the motorcycle was ready for production, but it was not meant to be. The technically sophisticated and complex Morbidelli V8 turned out to be very expensive. Its development cost around $4 million, and the finished motorcycle would have cost about $80,000 on the market. It was the enormous price that killed this project. After the Italians, the British decided to step on the same rake. Norton Nemesis was a bold hyperbike project that was supposed to show the whole world who's the boss and put those rice rockets to shame. The Nemesis project was contributed to by British engineer Alvin Almelin, who suggested combining 2 750cc engines from the Norton Manx model into a single V-shaped 8-cylinder, 1.5-liter engine. The investors and company management also had plans to create a 2-liter engine for use in lightweight sports cars. The British did an excellent job, from the first sketches to the finished motorcycle prototype. Less than a year passed. In 1998, the Norton Nemesis was shown to the public. It was a hyperbike killer, both in terms of appearance and performance. The 1.5-liter engine produced a maximum power output in the range of 240 to 290 horsepower and about 150 Newton meters, with this motorcycle having a dry weight of only 212 kilograms. Such a modest weight was achieved thanks to the use of magnesium. The estimated top speed was around 360 kilometers per hour. Despite its flamboyance and boldness, Nemesis never went into mass production for a number of reasons. And yes, one of them was the insane cost of £30,000 back in 1998. Currently, Norton Nemesis exists as a single specimen and is located in the National Motorcycle Museum in Britain. The next V8 motorcycle is associated with the name of a talented engineer, skilled mechanic, and big motorcycle enthusiast, the Australian Ian Drysdale. In the mid-90s, he set out to build a motorcycle with a V8 engine inspired by the racing Moto Guzzi V8. In 1997, the prototype was already being tested on the track, and in 1998 it was shown to the public. The motorcycle was intended to be a high-performance racing machine. The 150cc 8-cylinder engine could rev up to 19,000 revolutions per minute and produced a maximum power of 140 horsepower. Unlike the two previous ambitious prototypes from Norton and Morbidelli, Drysdale's machine was several times cheaper, and Ian managed to produce and sell a certain number of these motorcycles, all thanks to the use of many standard parts from other manufacturers. For example, the cylinder heads on Drysdale's motorcycle were from a Yamaha FZR 400. Only the engine block and crankshaft were made separately, and the frame and fairing were Ian's creations. The motorcycle cost about 20,000 United States dollars. A lot of parts were used from the Japanese Big Four motorcycles, and that was Drysdale's philosophy, to create a unique motorcycle with easy access to spare parts. In 2002, Ian presented another concept, a naked motorcycle with a V8 engine called the Bruiser, with the engine capacity increased to 1 liter. Another interesting project was brewing in 2001. Drysdale was preparing a V8 for Moto GP, since there was news about Grand Prix motorcycles switching to 4-stroke engines. Ian planned to sell ready-made engines to teams, and his concept for a 1-liter engine implied a performance level of 240 horsepower at 22,000 RPM. Even a sketch of the finished racing machine was developed, but no investors were found, and the project was not successful. In the early 2010s, Ian introduced an updated and now liter-class sport bike, which produced about 160 horsepower. Many motorcycle magazines were buzzing about his updated liter-class V8 in 2013-2015. It is not known for sure whether Drysdale is still making these motorcycles in 2023, or maybe he's working on a concept for a new, even more daring 2-wheeled machine. The success story of Boscos in the United States is obvious, and naturally sooner or later, someone would try to create competition for them. In 2001, Mike Kelly and his wife Karen opened a Boscos motorcycle customization shop in Florida. Their business gradually expanded to include custom cars and the Vanquish V8 motorcycle in the late 2000s. I wasn't able to find out the exact year this motorcycle debuted, but there are mentions of one unit being sold, produced in 2008. This motorcycle is yet another huge madness with a big engine. The small block model boasts a 7-liter engine and power ranging from 550 to 700 horsepower. There is a big block version with a 10.3-liter engine and power ranging from 850 to 1,050 horsepower. This is a motorcycle with the largest engine in the history of motorcycle manufacturing. There is also a third model with an LS3 engine at 7 liters. The Vanquish is still custom made to order and costs from $110,000 and up. When building each motorcycle, the wishes of the future owner are taken into account. Mike Kelly's company is far behind Boss Haas in terms of production volume, but for more than 2 decades, he has confidently been creating exclusive motorcycles. Editor. And here is a really cool custom build from Russia. An enthusiast from Desperados Motorcycle Club with the last name Naumov presented the Vojna 5000 motorcycle at a bike rally in Malojaroslavets in 2007, featuring a 5-liter V8 engine from a GAZ 53 in the frame. Naturally, with the support of the club, the creator spent about 2 years building this dinosaur. The goal was to build a powerful and amazing machine. The motorcycle was built around the engine, and the frame was carefully refined. Homemade valves and rocker arms, increased compression ratio, an improved fuel system, and many other upgrades allowed the engine to produce 200 horsepower. The design of the motorcycle means that the clutch is operated by both foot and hand, and there is only one gear, direct drive from the engine to the wheel. At idle speed, the motorcycle goes at 60 kilometers per hour. According to the creator of the project, he accelerated his machine up to 200 kilometers per hour. Maybe that's not the top speed, but they haven't tried going faster. The machine accelerates from 0 to 100 in about 3 seconds. The design of the chassis is a story of its own. At first glance, the cantilever front arm looks very similar to the unit from the Yamaha GTS 1000. In reality, they have nothing in common. This is a loose interpretation of the well-known suspension with a longitudinal arm and a steering knuckle. Judging by the photos, the machine was refined for some time and turned from a solo motorcycle into a sidecar. The sidecar housed the cooling radiator, fuel tank, and other equipment that was hard to fit into the solo frame. Overall, the homemade machine turned out really cool. This huge motorcycle with a V8 engine was built for drag racing, and it's reasonable to think it comes from the United States of America, but that's not the case. The Rapam V8 was created in 2007 in the United Kingdom by Nick Ergil, based on an engine. Nick managed to fit an 8.2-liter supercharged engine from a truck into a 2-wheeled chassis, producing between 1,000 and 1,200 horsepower. The power output depends on the boost pressure, and the unit runs on methanol. Thanks to the engine's potential, the 450-kilogram machine accelerates from 0 to 100 in just 2 seconds. In other respects, it's a classic design for high-speed straight-line racing. In February 2007, the motorcycle made its debut at the Motorcycle News London Motorcycle Show, and it took Nick 3 years and about $60,000 to create this monster. In this part of the video, I'll tell you about Dennis France and his 2 V8 motorcycle projects. The first one is the complete opposite of drag bikes with huge engines. The name of this motorcycle is Franz Flyer V8, and it boasts the most compact V8 in the motorcycle world. The displacement of the homemade engine is only 392 cubic centimeters. However, just listen to how wonderful it sounds. The second creation by Dennis is also a V8 custom. Its engine is a homemade crankcase fitted with cylinder piston groups from a Honda CB 350F, resulting in a displacement of 700 cc. For the frame and transmission, components from a 1979 BMW were used. At the Interpalm 2010 exhibition, a very interesting motorcycle with a V8 engine was presented. The name of this machine is Ducati Eleanor, and it is a completely exotic design among the other 2-wheeled creations we've looked at, Ducati Eleanor. An impressive project by Geeter Hartmann Wertvine. Geeter patented a unique V8 engine concept in which only 2 main connecting rods are connected to the crankshaft. The 2 central pistons are attached to the V-shaped split of the main connecting rod, while the other 2 pistons are connected by a rather clever kinematic system consisting of short connecting rods and rocker arms. The most amazing thing is that the master created this unparalleled work alone in the attic of his house, where he had several machines, a computer, and a couple hundred kilograms of spare parts. In addition to this, Geeter Hartmann Wertwein is a great example of a strong-willed person who did not give up after the tragedy that confined him to a wheelchair, but on the contrary, found his calling. Despite having a Ducati engine, Eleanor has a displacement of 868 cc and produces about 80 horsepower. The advantage of this design is lower vibrations and faster acceleration compared to a classic V8. However, this configuration also has its drawbacks, particularly higher lateral loads on the pistons. As of 2010, the engine had not yet been started, but after some time, a video of it running appeared.
To be continued.
By the way, the unit is based on a crankcase from a Ducati 900 SS and fits easily into the frame of this motorcycle. The 2010s gave the world several excellent motorcycles with V8 engines, and they all share a number of features. They are quite light and very powerful units. The first was built in 2014 by ZEF Eisenberg and his company Eisenberg Racing, ZEF. He positions his creation as the most powerful and lightest production motorcycle with a V8 engine in the world. The name of this motorcycle is Eisenberg Electric Vehicle 8. A's for it being the most powerful V8 motorcycle and the lightest V8 motorcycle Eisenberg is, of course, exaggerating a bit. But he managed to find a golden middle ground. He combined overall high performance, low weight, and a beautiful appearance. The V8 was created in collaboration with leading engine developers in the United Kingdom. The unit weighs only 88 kilograms, has a displacement of 3 liters, and is capable of producing 480 horsepower and 353 newton meters of torque, and that's with a naturally aspirated engine. The street version of the motorcycle is limited to 400 horsepower. Unlike the Bosch, Haas, and Vanquish engines, the Eisenberg engine uses a flat plane crankshaft instead of a crossplane. This design, although it adds vibrations, allows for a lighter crankshaft. The engine also revs up much faster, and this motor easily spins up to 11,000. A similar design makes the Eisenberg engine related to the engines of Ferrari and other racing V8s. And now another very important number. The motorcycle weighs only 280 kilograms. It took about 4 years to develop, and in 2015 the machine was undergoing full-scale testing. During its first test ride, supposedly just to break in the engine, the electric vehicle 8 accelerated to a very impressive speed of 333 kilometers per hour. The Eisenberg team claims that the top speed is around 362 kilometers per hour. However, they are quite confident that if the motorcycle is fitted with a fairing, it can surpass the 400 mark. Notice that when revving, the motorcycle hardly leans to the side, unlike many machines with large engines mounted longitudinally in the frame, all thanks to the opposite rotation direction of the clutch and gearbox relative to the crankshaft to balance the reactive torque. Throughout the second half of the 2010s, the motorcycle was taken to many exhibitions, attracting the interest of potential buyers, while also refining its design and testing it for reliability and safety. The guys from Eisenberg also had certain difficulties getting their motorcycle approved for use on public roads. In 2020, the launch of the motorcycle into production was planned with a sky-high price tag of 150,000 British pounds. But unfortunately, ZEF Eisenberg died that same year while attempting to set a speed record in a modified Porsche 911 Turbo S. And at the moment, the fate of the project is up in the air. The motorcycle you're looking at on the screen right now, the Aurora V8 Hellfire, appeared around the same time as the Eisenberg electric vehicle 8. It appeared on the opposite side of Britain, on the other side of the planet, in Australia. Vincent Messina, the engineer and creator of the Aurora, used to be a participant in road racing. In the early 2010s, apparently due to a lack of adrenaline in his blood, he decided to build a hyperbike for himself. The Aurora V8 Hellfire is equipped with a 2.6-liter Aurora power unit that produces 417 horsepower of maximum power and 319 Nm of torque. These insane figures are transmitted through a 5-speed gearbox via a drive shaft to the rear wheel. Vincent claims that his naked reaches a speed of 340 km per hour. The motorcycle weighs a modest 265 kg dry, which is light for its class. The design was created by Tim Cameron, including the front wheel suspension. Messina chose Norman Hosek's solution with a lever system and a single shock absorber. Otherwise, Messina's creation is packed, as it should be, with modern technologies: advanced Brembo brakes, Öhlins suspension, 10-level traction control, and much more. In 2016, Vincent planned to produce a limited series of his motorcycle and was actively looking for clients and sponsors. However, at the moment, there is no news about Aurora. Created by Dimitor. And the third among hyper motorcycles is the 2-liter PGM V8, created. This magnificent motorcycle was made in 2017 by former MotoGP mechanic Paul Maloney, and it took about 7 years to develop. Since Paul Maloney is not a fan of the supercharged V-turbine, he decided to build a fierce, naturally aspirated engine. The PGM engine is actually 2 inline-4s from a Yamaha R1, combined at a 90-degree angle. The 2-liter V engine produces 343 horsepower with a maximum power output and 214 Nm of torque. The engineers managed to keep the weight of the PGM V8 within reasonable limits. That's its dry weight. It weighs 242 kg. This machine costs $180,000, so mass production is out of the question. The French tuning studio Lazarette, known for its crazy projects, presented its V8 motorcycle called Lazarette LM 847 at the 2016 Geneva Motor Show. Many sources claim that this is a motorcycle, although its 4-wheel design may raise some doubts in this regard. In any case, this design is definitely worth a closer look. Ludovic Lazarette is one of the most remarkable designers in the motorcycle industry, and his unusual creation constantly stirs up the front pages of motorcycle magazines. The Lazarette LM 847 is equipped with a 4.7-liter V8 engine from Maserati, which produces a whopping 470 horsepower, while the motorcycle itself weighs 400 kilograms. Yes, the design is quite interesting, but in my opinion, it clearly loses out to the likes of the PGM V8, Aurora Hellfire, and Eisenberg Electric Vehicle 8. The LM 847 looks unusual and definitely attracts attention, but Ludovic Lazarette really overcomplicated its design. Now I'll say a few words about modern V8-themed custom bikes. There are quite a few of them in the world, and I won't list every single one, but there are a few that are worth mentioning. This Kawasaki is the creation of the Briton Alan Millard. The Japanese company has never produced motorcycles with such an engine. This is a custom bike based on the 1974 Kawasaki Z1 and 2 engines from the same model. Originally, the Kawasaki Inline 4 had a displacement of 900 cc, but the final V8 has a displacement of 1.6 liters. Due to the reduced piston stroke, the engine of this interesting machine produces about 150 horsepower per minute and accelerates the motorcycle up to 230 km/h. Alan did all the work himself in his small workshop. Alan Millard is an extremely talented motorcycle builder. He has been creating unique motorcycles all his life. In addition to the V8, he made 2-wheeled machines with a homemade V12, a bike with a V10 engine from a Dodge Viper, and so on, and his V12 was recently featured on the channel. Here's a hint. The most well-known, in my opinion, both in Russia and beyond, is the Customs V8 in a frame, built by Artem Boldarev, a popular motoblogger known by the nickname Bolt. This is a homemade 300 horsepower motorcycle called Gangrena with a Toyota engine. The creator of the project wanted to build something big and powerful after a test drive of the Boss Haas motorcycle, which, like Gangrena, is equipped with an 8-cylinder engine. Artyom was helped by many people, but most of the work was done by him, together with his friend, Kostya. The unusual 3-meter chassis, the fuel tank, and some other elements are custom-made by the creator. The vehicle turned out to be quite original. A Toyota V8 automatic transmission, unique design, and a weight of nearly 700 kilograms. Bolt claimed that the motorcycle could break the 400 kilometers per hour barrier, but the bold ideas of the creator of this custom bike were not meant to come true. Unfortunately, Artyom died in a crash in the summer of 2019. We remember you, Bolt. And finally, here's a completely new custom bike for you. This vintage motorcycle with a V8 engine was built by Pavel Malenik. It's called the JAB V8 motorcycle and has been presented to the public. It was in 2023. To understand how and why it appeared, we need a little historical background. At the beginning of the 20th century, there lived John Alfred Prestwich in England, and he founded a company that produced motorcycles and engines, and the company was called JAB. A little bit. From 1904 to 1908, John decided that it would be best for his business to focus exclusively on engine production. JAB was one of the largest engine manufacturers in Europe during the 1920s and 1930s. Many motorcycles of that time were equipped with engines from this company, and larger engines, particularly V8 configurations, were intended for airplanes. And now, 100 years later, the JAB V8 caught the interest of Czech customizer Pavel Malenik, who began working on his project in 2017. The most difficult part of building this motorcycle was recreating the JAB V8 engine, of which only 2 have survived in the world, one of which is on display cut open for exhibition at the London Science Museum. It took about 5 years to create the engine, and the only factory-made parts in it are the bearings and spark plugs. The end result was a magnificent motorcycle in a vintage style. The engine has a displacement of 4,144 cc and boasts impressive characteristics, at least for a unit with technology dating back to the early 1900s. It produces 50 horsepower of power at 1,300 RPM and about 250 Nm of torque. Pavel Malenik presented his creation at the Bohemian Custom Motorcycles Show in Prague and was awarded Best of Show. This event took place in early March 2023. To sum up, motorcycles with a V8 as a power unit are very interesting and charismatic, but throughout their more than 100-year history, they have not become mainstream. At most, about 10,000 Boss Haas motorcycles have been produced. But most of these unique machines are custom-built, created as one-offs, built entirely out of enthusiasm, either for certain sporting achievements or to showcase the skill of the engineer and creator. The small number of such creations and the fact that they are not put into mass production is primarily due to cost. First of all, the cost of developing a motorcycle model. Even creating a V8 motorcycle not entirely from scratch is quite an expensive undertaking, and putting it into mass production is an even more difficult task. The model has to pay for itself. Or in the context of large-scale production with a wide range of equipment, it shouldn't drive the entire company into losses. As far as we know, the modern market is completely satisfied with motorcycles that have much simpler and cheaper to produce power units. At the same time, the V8 doesn't provide a huge increase in power and speed compared to the inline 4, which is typical for powerful and fast production motorcycles. It makes sense that the more complex production of V8 motorcycles will be more expensive than simpler designs, and there's no need to write in the comments that computer numerical control machines don't care what they're machining. Creating any product involves costs, and in any case, making a V8 with computer numerical control will require more raw materials, more time, and more human effort to develop the program and control the process. That's how the world works, and that's why V8 motorcycles are so rare and at the same time so interesting. That's all I have to say for now. As usual, this was the Cross Moto channel. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this short story was interesting to you and worthy of a repost, like, comment, and subscription. I want to give a special thanks to everyone who supports my work. For those who wish to support financially, the details are in the video description. See you next time. Goodbye.